Today we're talking cinematic shots and everything that goes with it so that you guys can become better visual storytellers. Stay tuned. What's up guys, I am Rob Federick and welcome back to my channel. I am a filmmaker with over 23 years of professional experience, and my goal with this channel has always been to share my knowledge, give back, and up-level the new generation of filmmakers that are coming onto the scene. And today I'm going to be going over a bunch of my shots from various projects that I've worked on throughout the years, sort of like a sketchbook tour of sorts. The purpose of this is really to kind of analyze some of the shots that work, to see sort of how I improved as a filmmaker, and hopefully you guys can take something out of that to apply to your own projects. So we're going to look at some student films first. The interrogation room, and there were some interesting things here in the interrogation room. I obviously had like some really high sort of contrast looks. This was shot in 16mm. This was using an Arri flex camera. I really wanted to capture like a moodiness. I was trying to go for like a dark comedy, and so we wanted to go with super high contrast lighting just because it was an interrogation room, and I wanted to kind of go with that cliche like single spotlight look. I think we were using like a 500 Arri light back in the day, which was incandescent bulbs. It wasn't even LEDs back then. We used one of the audio recording rooms, which had a glass pane for you to record, but we made it look like it was a two-way mirror. And again, we were using one single light source. What I would have done differently in here as a student film is maybe brought some atmosphere here and hazed it up so that we could see beams of light that would be coming down. So the next film I have is The Lucy Show. This is my thesis film, and one of the things about this film that's really cool is character introductions. When you're introducing characters, you want to make sure that they're introduced in an interesting way and give them an importance. And so in this case, like I wanted to introduce the priest sort of getting ready, and obscuring his face and using these sort of voyeuristic looks was really important and interesting to sort of reveal. And then these iconic turns where the character's revealed, those are things that I really enjoy. And again, we're shooting this like sort of voyeuristically. There's a story element there. These were sort of the shots that introduced the Lucy character, and I shot them sort of at a low angle looking up. I wanted her to look imposing, and I also shot her usually with a Dutch angle. And Dutch angles are really great to sort of tease your eye into saying, hey, something's different here, something looks off. The point is that she is the devil, well, at least pretending to be. Playing with a sense of space in narrative filmmaking is really important. Utilizing your set, utilizing your space as a set piece for the characters and the story. I really like this shot, especially because there's like sort of this really geometric breakup of the frame and sort of this cupola over here that highlights him in the middle. It doesn't necessarily always have to serve the story. It just might be a visually interesting piece for people to look at. We shot this in Super 16 film. I really wanted to use the wider aspect ratio and just play around with framing. I'm a big fan of silhouette shots, and I love this shot in particular because the contrast is really cool. It's a cool shot. So next we're gonna go into the briefcase. Shot it at the Universal lot in Los Angeles. We shot this in 60mm film on an Arri flex camera, much like the one that Spielberg had when he was a young guy. I really love this film because we shot it in sort of 4:3 aspect ratio, which was square. And I was trying to make more of like this noir film since I knew I was shooting them in black and white. And again, character introductions, right? Like we're looking at this character, spark up a cigarette, and then we see him, right? Because the cigarette has an importance to the film. There's another really cool shot that I really enjoy. This sort of talking through barriers, right? I like the idea of really showing the barrier of this fence because these characters are at odds with each other. You don't know it yet, but as the film progresses, you find out later that this man's a hitman and he's got a target, but little does he know that this lady is actually a contract killer as well that is set to go after the same target. What I like about this shot in particular is obviously it's a reveal shot. She comes out of the darkness and into the light. But what I like about this framing is that we also have this sort of darkness behind her that makes her stand out. And it's really cool because again, you're using leading lines. The door frame behind her sort of draws your eye to her, and that makes her stand out and makes her look more important. Just little things like that that you can add to your shots to make your characters or your story more interesting. So the next film is my first professional independent short film called Sayona, or The Mountain Whaler. Looking at character introductions, I'm a sucker and a fan for some of this stuff. Showing different aspects of the environment to establish the scene, and then boom, this sort of boot that comes into the shot and walks in, and we don't really see the characters yet. We see them sort of from the back, low angle, And again, it's just to sort of create mystery and intrigue. This is a horror thriller film, and I wanted to make sure that I created also a sense of adventure. And again, we don't see their faces. Again, to create curiosity. Who are these characters? Where are they? They're in the middle of nowhere. They're by themselves. They're hiking. They're out of focus. And, you know, the composition's here. And then we finally get sort of a little bit of a reveal. And he's observing that the sun's going down and he's looking, and then the second character coming in. I'm a real big fan of just introducing characters in that way, with coming into frame and that look that they give themselves. Again, there's no dialogue, but it implies that sun is going down and something's going to happen. They observe the sun. They're in agreement, we got to set up camp, and then boom, we're cutting to the fire. I thought this shot in particular is cool because, again, we're over the shoulder of the actor, but it's a moment that he touches and realizes something, and sort of we get this slow reveal of the blood, and your eye tends to go to the blood in the nature that it's framed. It is a super high contrast shot. In the Western world, we read left to right. We see the hand first, and then all this other information over here. He's showing the blood, and then he reveals that the character is in fact dead. That was a really interesting shot, particularly because we don't really see his face. Really what we see is sort of his open mouth there with the blood and the veins and all that stuff, but he's obscured. And that creates a sense of mystery and suspense. It's like we want to see more, but our imagination fills the rest of the gaps in. Less is more sometimes. The next film is The Borderlands. And in this particular film, I really was trying to experiment more with camera movement. A lot of my other short films when I was a student, and even my first independent film, there was a lot of really still shots on sticks, maybe some handheld stuff, but I wasn't really experimenting much with dolly movements. The tone of this film was a lot darker and a lot more depressing. It's about a world where people who die just sometimes come back, and they're sort of shells of who they used to be. These zombies can actually see into the other side. They can see between life and death. And so I shot this movie kind of voyeuristically, like we're some person beyond the veil, like we could be caught between the borderlands ourselves as the audience. Another point in this film is that Henry's experiencing a lot of grief from the death of his daughter, and the reason that she passed away was because of a car accident. Gwen, his wife, was driving. He's sort of estranged from his wife and he's not really talking to her. And so I shot most of the shots with Gwen in a very voyeuristic, sort of isolated moment. It was to create a sense of distance between the two of them. I never really shot them together at any point unless it was a flashback. All right, next we have these music videos that I shot for Romeo Santos. This one in particular was called La Santa y la Diabla, the Devil and the Saint. This is a story about how he's met this woman who was kind of a devil to him and messed him up really bad. And, you know, this other woman that's more of a kindly soul, like, brought him back and nurtured him and showed him the meaning of love. We shot this in Toledo, Spain. We picked this red medieval looking room. This is Romeo's story piece that he contributed. He really likes to act in the music videos. And so he decided that he was going to sort of be gambling, playing cards with the devil. Cinematically, you want to make sure that your set pieces and the sense of space really add to the narrative that you're telling. This was a really good use of that. You know, we added like a cigarette smoke. It adds this plume of smoke that just gives this texture and depth that we synonymously associate with the devil. Smoke, brimstone, fire, red, you know. So aesthetically, we're putting all these things into the frame to give it a sense of narrative storytelling. She had fantastic eyes, and one of my sort of signature pieces in film is to really capture close-ups of eyes. This actress had these just devilish eyes, so we darkened them really hard with mascara and eyeliner. They just pop, and so we wanted to get some of these like really close-ups. This was shot on an Alexa. My DP on this was Rafa Yuc, who is a very famous cinematographer in Spain. We shot this on an Arri Alexa first generation and an Optimo 200 zoom lens. We were getting really close-up shots that just had this beautifully shallow depth of field. The rings and the texture, all of this is really interesting stuff to me visually, especially for music videos. You want a lot of eye candy a lot of the time. We're talking about the devil and the saint, and so we wanted to make it a little more fantasy driven. If we're gonna go with this storyline, we need to stylistically approach the visuals and the sets to feel a little more, you know, part of that world. And in this particular shot, I actually shot this with a green screen and recreated this background and added sort of a sense of fantasy with like a more elaborate sky and this big flare, but it was just to create something visually interesting that didn't seem of this world. We were lucky that it was a very windy day, and so it actually caught, you know, the wind actually helped keep her hair flowing and her dress flowing, and just with the sharp movements of her dancing, right? We were always moving, we were always on a dolly so that we could get a sense of movement and rhythm to the music. I just really, really love this shot. It's sort of when we introduce the character of the saint. And again, we were so lucky that it was windy and there were leaves everywhere. And so these are one of the things that were like happy accidents can happen, where the wind is actually carrying the performance of the shot. We have these beautiful punch-ins of just her and the wind, and we shot this in slow motion, and it just created this epic sense. This is one of my favorite shots in the music video, because we're looking up at her, how the wind is capturing her long flowing hair. She's beautifully backlit in this medieval city that we were shooting in, and it just created this amazing narrative feel that added to the stylistic aspect of the story, but it also made her look ethereal, almost like a halo effect. And then again, aesthetically leading lines, you know, with the staircases leading over to the characters here in this, you know, beautiful setting that we have that like sort of has a lot of depth into the shot. Again, depth, always something that you should go for. These beautiful close-ups again with the Optimo 200. It's action, you know, these are action shots. He's a musician, so we want to see the action of his fingers moving, and we want to see that close up. You know, when you put these in the right moment in the music video, kind of center the action into a moment that captures the audience's attention. You don't want to just cut from wide shot to medium shot. You want to throw some close-ups in there and some inserts to break things up and make it interesting. These were beautiful shots of Sully just dancing, and she would move her hands really, really well and just had these beautiful hand motions and interesting flowing moments. So we wanted to really capture that. And again, it was this point she's representing the saint. And so she's dressed in all white. We've got this glowing candlelight around her. And instead of these sharp, sort of seductive movements, now they're very slow and beautifully flowing moments that give her a sense of peace, like this ethereal sense that she's more of like an angel. And we gave her this shawl that she would like flip around, almost like angel's wings, but she could just maneuver it in such beautiful ways. And it just created a sense of epic scope to the music video. And that's something that we really enjoyed. So anyways, guys, that's our video, and there's definitely a bunch of other projects that I was not able to cover in this video, otherwise we would have been here for a long time. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how to create better shots and, you know, how to use visual storytelling to the best of your ability to tell your stories. And if you found value in this video, just drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support goes a long way. And with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.